In order to be able to put images and documents onto your website, you'll need to first upload them into your dashboard's file manager, which is where you first upload and organize your documents before doing all of that. So as for how we find the file manager, we navigate over to the dashboard tool over here. And from there, we go to the files dashboard. And that will take us to the file manager. So as we can see on screen now, this is very similar to a sort of folder and file system, very similar to what you'd see on your own personal computer and so on. And we can browse through these documents as is. We may see some documents and images that are just loose at the very top level. But we can also use this jump to folder tool in case you've got a very large library of files and folders already to navigate similar to a sitemap through all your folders in place. So for example, we can see I've got a folder called sample folder, and beneath that is a folder called sample images. I can either find it here and click on this, or I can find it casually browsing the main directory like this, and we can see there's our sample folder, and we can click in like so. And again, we can see right now it just has a folder called sample images. Let's say I want to use this space to upload some documents as well, and then organize those into a second folder as well called, say, sample documents. So let's start by just uploading some files into this initial space, or this folder called sample folder. Whilst here, I'll press the upload files button, and I'll get shown this interface which wants me to select one or more files from my own system, my own device, and either drag them into this space, or I can click this box which will open up a window for me showing my device and items. So just off screen, I'm just picking some files from my own device. In this case, just a few documents like PDFs and Excel sheets and so on, and selecting those. Once I've chosen them from my device and handed them over, they'll appear staged on this uploading dock. And then from there, we'll press continue to start uploading them to the website. And then after some time, it'll reload and show me the files that have been uploaded into this space, or just reload the folder so I can see how it looks. We can see all of our files in play now. So that's all well and good, but it looks a bit disorganized now, having just a bunch of files loose at the top when we've got a folder for images. So in a similar sense, let's make a folder for documents inside this space. So to do so, whilst in the appropriate folder you want to make the new one, we'll choose new folder. And in my case, I want to call this sample documents by filling in the name field and pressing add. And that will make the brand new folder. So now we just need to move our documents into it somehow. So we can either do this one at a time or in bulk. So let's start by trying this one file one at a time. So we'll press the 3-button icon on that file. And from that menu, we'll choose Move to Folder. And we'll see this pop up map of folders again. So we'll just find the folder we want to move this file to, the one called Documents in this case, and choose Save. And we'll reload this folder to see the file shifted into the subfolder rather than listed here. But let's say I want to do the rest of these in bulk. I can just use these checkboxes to select these additional documents still hanging around. And then using this tool on the top left, think of it as a do something to selected items button. We can then click this drop down and say, with the items I've selected, choose the Move to Folder action. And then again, we see the sitemap of folders. I'm going to choose my documents folder I've just made and press save. So they've all been moved, and if we click into the folder now, we can see the files I've made have been moved into this new folder to keep things nice and organized. So now the next thing to talk about really is how the files themselves work in this system. So despite how it first looks, these files are not just raw file downloads sitting on the server. The CMS is putting a layer of abstraction in front, in the same way that pages have things like attributes about names and descriptions and such. the CMS also lets you write such metadata about files as well, beyond just having the file itself stored on the platform. So for example, we have this PDF document over here. I can click into this and give it a more suitable title when it's appearing in lists and search results and so on, and also give it a description and tags to better match against certain keywords people may use to find it. So with that, let's click in and do so, and look at this file on its summary screen. And we can see here's a list of all the sort of attributes about the file. This will be a mix of attributes you can change, and some of these are just raw natural data about the file, such as its size and so on. And if this was an image, you'd see things like its size and dimensions and stuff like that. If it were an audio or video file, you see its duration and so on and so forth. Beyond that, you may have one or more bespoke attributes unique to your platform that you would have been trained on. So for example, if you've got a review date system where files can be due for review and email people, these are the attributes you'd be manipulating to do so. And you may have some other things in here, doing more bespoke things with your file systems as well. But again, the principle stands is that in addition to uploading a file, there are attributes about it that do either very simple things like just metadata to write about the file, or other attributes tied to more complex systems unique to your site. So in this case, let's say I just want to write more data about the file to help it appear in the site-wide search. So we'll click on Edit and Edit Attributes, and we'll just fill out the core 3 ones up here. So for the title, we'll just clean this up so it looks more like what I want it to be. In this case, let's say I want it to say example training document. And this just makes the title look more presentable when it appears in things like your site-wide search, or when it's listed in any sort of list you make on the front end. It will instead show the title rather than the raw file name. Although it's worth noting that we're not actually changing the raw file name when someone downloads the document, so it's still going to be, when it's downloaded by someone, appearing as placeholder _ PDF, so on and so on. So it's still recommended to have a good habit of having nice clean file names in the first place, but know that on top of that, you can also have a more presentable, site-friendly title when it's just appearing in things like your search results. In a similar vein, we have a description about the file. So again, this will be in case this file shows up in a search result of any kind. You can have the title and the description of the file showing as a search result listing. So in this case, I'll just type in a sentence like so. It's also worth noting that, for example, your site-wide search doesn't just search for pages, but also finds files, and it will be looking at things like the title and the description and the tags to find matching keywords. So for example, if someone searched for, say, healthcare, you'd likely want, if you expect people to use that word to find this file, you'd have healthcare in the title or description, or just as a simple tag like so. And with that, let's show off the tag feature just by tapping in a bunch of keywords we expect people to use to find this document, and use comma separation to type those in. Beyond that, if you've got any more advanced attributes you know about that you want to make use of, you can use this field here to put those attributes into this edit form. So for example, the one we'll focus on here is one you likely have on your site as well, which is either hiding or showing this file in the site-wide search. So your site may be the case where when you do a search on the front end using the search tool built into your site, you get a mix of results of both pages and documents. And in the case of my site on screen right now, it's built so that documents are by default eligible to appear in the search as results. And there's an option here if I want to butt in and say, actually, for this one particular file, I want to hide it from the site search. So I can press go to add that field to my edit. And then with the attribute, I'd say check that, hide it from the site search. And then again, that would stop this file from being eligible to appear in the search. That's just that one feature it's tied to. It's still possible to make links to the file and so on. It's just, this is what this one attribute is built for in this bespoke case. And again, if your site is doing this thing where documents can appear in the site-wide search, either it's a matter of the files appear by default and you can elect to hide them one by one, or it might be the other way around, where by default files don't show in the search until you manually choose to make them eligible to appear. Either way, that will likely be an attribute similar to this one to do so. And again, You'll have various other attributes that do very bespoke things, like a file review system or anything. The idea is just go to the file, click on edit, find the attribute you want to use, and fill it in as necessary based on what it needs to do. And with that, we'll save our changes. And the summary screen for this one PDF document will update. And we can see our title in play, we see our description, we see our tags, we see the fact that I hid it from the site-wide search, and everything else was left as is. And then further down, we can see stuff like the URL for downloading the file. Again, we can see the file name hasn't changed because the title is different to that. And we can see some other things like download stats and so on. So we can see things like what time the file was added and who by, how many downloads the file has had so far, and so on and so forth. The last two things to talk about with files really is now just versions, and then how to see more in-depth stats about the file beyond just what we've seen at the bottom of this screen. So, for example, if I go to this PDF document and go to Manage, we can go to a Versions panel, and we can see a version history of the file as it's existed so far on the site. So, for example, we can see that there was the initial upload made by myself a few minutes ago, and then a few minutes later I filled in a bunch of attributes such as changing its title, description, and tags, and that counts as a new version as well. Where this version system will really be of most use is if you're replacing a file with a brand new version. So for example, let's pretend I've had this document on the site for a very long time, a couple of weeks or months and so on, and there are about 10 or 15 links to it all over the website. It would naturally be very annoying if I have to then make a new document for an update and then find those links and update them all by hand. So instead what we can do is just replace this new file on top of the old one, and any reference to it like a link or a search result will know to keep up and use the newer file we're uploading in a moment as well. So with that in mind, let's close that and go to the edit panel. Oh, apologies, not edit, manage. And we'll go to swap. And again, this gives us an upload interface. So we'll again click this to open my personal files. I'll pick a new document. In this case, I'm just picking a PDF with the number 3 at the end to differentiate. With that staged, I'll import that file. And we can see all the other things about the file, its title, descriptions and stuff have been untouched. All we've done is upload a new version on top, and we see this new version 3 file I've made and uploaded has been put in its place now as well. And again, any reference to this document as it's existed so far, like links and stuff, will now update to go to this newer file behind the scenes. And we can double check that by going to Manage and Versions to see that log again. And we can see there's a new version 3. And we can see who uploaded it, and we know that in this case the update was because a new file was put on top. But we can see we still have our prior versions where we use the older file. So it's worth noting that in this log, the one that's marked as green with this checkbox, that's the live version that all links to this file will be using. But if we want to change our minds and go back for any reason, we can say actually go back to this version with just the prior file download, and then straight away every reference to this file is updated again to go back to that old version, which is now live. And then from there, we can delete any old ones or any non-live ones, such as this new one we've changed our minds on. We can press the trash icon. That will delete, and we're back to where we were before using that PDF file number 1. And the version 3 I made before has now been scrapped and undone. Lastly, let's talk about file statistics. So we talked about the preview panel down here, just showing you a basic summary. But under the files dashboard, you've seen the file manager. We also have the file statistics area. So we can go into here, and from here, what we need to do is choose a file in the first place. So we'll press choose file. And we'll just look at our most recent uploads. Let's go with the example document I've been building up so far. And with that in place, let's leave all these other settings as they are and press search. And there'll be no result in this case, given it's been no downloads. But what we'd see here is a list of all the downloads that have happened for this file. Let's actually mock that up by visiting the file ourselves for a second. So we'll go to our example training doc we've put together. And we'll find its system link. We won't use the direct URL because that's not being tracked by the system. That's just the raw download that people get to at the end of the day. When we're making links on the front end, we'll end up with links like these, which are tracked URLs to record things like downloads and so on. So we'll copy that and give that a visit to pretend we're clicking the link naturally from the front end. We see our document load up or download as necessary. And now we should have that logged in the statistics. So if I go back to stats and refresh this again, you should see at least one download recorded because of that link. And we see some stats about it. So we can see which user account, if it was a logged in person, downloaded the file. If it's more of a public site you have, then this will just say something like a guest or anonymous to represent unknown users because they're not using accounts or anything. Download time, so the timestamp when the download happened. We can see what version of the file the person downloaded when they did so. We can see from which page they downloaded the file from. So in my case, it's from this dashboard page in the back end. But of course, realistically, in real cases, you'll see which page in the front end people access the file from. And we can see how many times that person has downloaded that file specifically. And then you've got more bespoke things like filtering out to only show latest versions per person and stuff like that. So you can get as granular as you need to with this sort of content. And with that, that's the file manager from top to bottom. We've talked about uploading, organizing into folders and stuff, and then filling in details around the file, such as title, description, and then from there looking at versions and switching between versions on the fly and replacing it with new files, and then lastly looking at file statistics to see download usage as well.